The next cluster of disorders we're going to talk about are dissociative disorders, and 3 disorders fall into this category: depersonalization derealization disorder, dissociative amnesia disorder, and dissociative identity disorder. We're going to start first with depersonalization derealization disorder. The diagnostic criteria for depersonalization derealization disorder are as follows: the presence of persistent or recurrent experiences of depersonalization, derealization, or both. During the depersonalization or derealization experiences, reality testing remains intact, and the symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. But of course, this brings up a question of what do we mean by depersonalization or derealization? So the DSM-5 defines depersonalization as experiences of unreality, detachment, or being an outside observer with respect to one's thoughts, feelings, sensations, body, or actions. And they give us examples, things like perceptual alterations, having a distorted sense of time, feeling like yourself is unreal or absent, or emotional and or physical numbing. Derealization, on the other hand, is defined as experiences of unreality or detachment with respect to surroundings. And the examples the DSM-5 gives are things like feeling as though individuals or objects are experienced as unreal, dreamlike, foggy, lifeless, or visually distorted. But if you notice, across both of these, there's this sense of unreality, of either oneself or the world around you feeling like it's not real, that there's something sort of off about it. However, again, despite this sense, the person hasn't lost touch with reality. So the person's reality testing remains intact. They know what's real versus what's not. And because of this, the symptoms are all that more upsetting, causing clinically significant distress or impairment. A few things to note about the epidemiology of depersonalization derealization disorder. As of the publication of the DSM-5, less than 2% of the population was diagnosed, and data would suggest that it's just as common in men as in women. And although the symptoms can start at any time, the average age of symptom onset is about 16 years of age, but symptoms can begin much earlier or later than that as well. The next disorder we're going to talk through is dissociative amnesia disorder. And dissociative amnesia is characterized by an inability to recall important autobiographical information that is not attributable to ordinary forgetting. And the information that can't be recalled is typically of a traumatic or stressful nature. And second, that the symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Now, in general, there are 3 different ways that information is unrecallable, if that's a word. We would call the amnesia localized if an entire event or a period of time is forgotten. So, for example, someone couldn't recall a car accident or the whole time she was in the car. That would be an example of localized amnesia. There's also selective amnesia, in which the person can't recall a specific aspect of an event. For example, if the person can't recall being in the car, if the person can remember being in the car, but can't remember the collision itself. And there's also what's called generalized amnesia, in which the person can't recall certain aspects of their own identity or their life history. So it's not about an event or a period of time, but rather about oneself or one's history. Dissociative amnesia disorder can also be specified as with dissociative fugue, if that occurs on top of the symptoms. And a dissociative fugue is when a person goes somewhere for an apparently purposeful reason, but because of their amnesia symptoms, they don't know why. So as a result, the travel ends up being bewildering to the person because they're not sure why they're going where they're going because of lost autobiographical information. In the most extreme cases, people can travel to a whole new place and end up constructing a whole new identity because they're not able to recall their own. Now, admittedly, there's a lot that we don't know about dissociative amnesia, and part of the reason for that is because it's not as though there's any external sign that a person is experiencing symptoms. The symptoms can come on quite suddenly and can also be recurrent. People are also at times unaware or only sort of partially aware of the symptoms, which can lead to a lot of confusion and also disruption. What's more, people might minimize their symptoms or simply deny that they're occurring, perhaps as a defense mechanism, because the notion of losing oneself or losing time is so upsetting, so people will do what they can to cover up those symptoms. Best estimates suggest that dissociative amnesia disorder is likely diagnosable in less than 2% of the population. However, again, this is just an estimate since it's so difficult to recognize and diagnose. Research has suggested that it may be more common in women than men, and the reason for this is because there's some evidence that dissociative amnesia is linked to traumatic events, and for various reasons, women are more likely to be exposed to traumatic experiences, especially those of an interpersonal nature. Finally, in terms of treatment, the focus is often on attempting to uncover repressed experiences that may be leading to the amnesic symptoms. So we'll stop there for this segment of the online lecture. In part 2, we'll talk through the diagnostic criteria for dissociative identity disorder.